Today, we're joined by Business Development Manager for Journey Beyond, Gareth. Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
We'll get straight into it. What inspired you to work for Journey Beyond?
To me, it was an absolute no-brainer when the opportunity came up. It's probably one of Australia's most iconic businesses, especially with the trains. The GAN, Indian Pacific. It's always great to sell something that you can sell anything really, but it's always really great to sell something you're passionate about and something that you love. And as long as I've lived in Australia, which is about 7 or so years, I've always wanted to travel on our trains. So it was a no-brainer when the opportunity arose.
Of course. And how are you guys tackling COVID-19 safety protocols, specifically on the trains at the moment?
First and foremost, the most obvious stuff is keeping the train clean. I guess it's not something we didn't do before, but even more so now. So the trains will be thoroughly cleaned twice a day. The trains will also have been thoroughly cleaned before we even start traveling. Our first journey isn't until the 30th of August. Hand sanitizer will be available throughout. Temperature checks will be done on guests as they get on and off the train. Now remember, that's not just the beginning and end of the journey. We have off-train excursions. And so people will when they get on and off, we'll have temperature checks there as well. So to make sure, obviously, that they don't stay, they stay with below flu symptoms, etc. So the higher temperatures. And then the other one, the most noticeable for the guests, will be the dining carriages. We've actually doubled the amount of dining carriages we've got on board. So that will have basically 2 dining carriages for every one. The reason being, it's a fixed style booth seating in majority of our dining carriages. Usually you'd have 4 people at a table. Obviously going forward, we can't have that. So we've doubled it because majority of people who travel in groups of 2. So those are the most noticeable things. The other one is our single cabins. So we have gold single cabins. For the foreseeable future, we've taken them out of the fleet. The main reason being they have shared bathrooms. We just can't facilitate cleaning the bathroom fully every time that someone uses it. It's just not realistic. So what we're doing is anyone who's booked into one of those cabins for a future date that isn't looking to refund, to move it or anything, they will be put into a gold twin cabin. And then we won't take any future bookings for gold single until we're sort of mid to next year.
Further notice. Yes, until everything's reviewed again, of course.
Yeah, correct.
And these protocols, as you did mention, off-train excursions and local operators as well. How are we tying all of that in?
So they're following the same rules that we've got. So actually, if anyone's on our website, on our Journey Beyond website, we actually have what's called Journey Safe, which is our COVID protocols. And all our operators are following those same guidelines. There's five steps, which is basically what I just went through before. Number one thing, again, you'll notice with the off-train excursions and those operators is having to use more coaches, for example. So when you get off the train, often you'll have to use a coach to go to the actual particular excursion. So we'll have to double those numbers most likely. It really depends on where exactly we are and how many people they need to be carrying. And we also may have to put limits on some of our excursions just because certain venues can only house so many people with social distancing involved. So it means before the whole train could do one particular excursion, now it might be that it's limited to a third of the train or whatever it happens to be. It will be a number category and it will be based on people making the choice of which one they want to do.
Of course. What would you consider a unique part of any one of the train itineraries?
That's a real good question. And for me, the best part of any time you go traveling is the stuff you don't really know about. You come out, you look in the itinerary, you're like, oh yeah, that looks great. I don't really understand why we're going there. And that for me is the same with us. So whether it's on the Indian Pacific and you'll stop at a place in Nullarbor called Rawlinna, which is a sheep station, you're in the absolute middle of the Nullarbor, middle of nowhere. And depending on which direction you go, you'll either have breakfast on the side of the train or dinner on the side of the train. A really, really unique experience. And the other one for me is on the GAN expedition, doing dinner at the Telegraph Station. So dinner at the Telegraph Station in Alice Springs, again, really the only way you can do it is with us. Doesn't sound all that special, just it's a nice dinner somewhere, but it's out under the stars. We're traveling during dry season, so weather, only thing that might be an issue is being a bit cold, but we provide ponchos for everyone to keep them warm. There's a band that plays for you. It's just a really, really cool experience, having an Australian-style barbecue dinner. And there's also a camel there for those who want to learn to ride a camel. And then on a newer one, Coffs Harbour, we do a dinner under the star on the side of the beach. Very, very, again, that unique experience, just something a little bit different, which our guests just absolutely love.
Yeah, of course. What's the main benefits of upgrading to platinum service opposed to gold?
So the number one and most obvious thing, again, for that guest, if they walked into a gold cabin and then walked into a platinum next, they'll notice the size. A platinum cabin is about 3 times the size of a gold cabin. The bathroom as well. In a gold cabin, it's like a wet room, like a small ensuite wet room where everything's sort of really well placed, but sort of on top of each other, if that makes sense. Where a platinum is more like a small hotel bathroom, separate shower, separate toilet and sink, etc., all in their own little areas. Then the other thing is that the platinum actually have their own area of the train. So the only platinum guests are in that area. They have their own lounge and dining car, and you're only associating with a lot less people. There's also more staff per person. So it's basically a 1-to-1 staff ratio, guest to staff, where it's about a 3-to-1 in the gold section.
Yep. And the bedding there as well, between gold and platinum, what's the difference there?
So yep, so in gold you're using a twin style bunk style bedding system, and in platinum you've got a choice of a double bed or a twin bed. So obviously for those who aren't looking to use the bunk style bedding system, then platinum's the way to go. When the gold singles come back in operation, that is an alternative for those people to get around the bunk styles. The one thing I always do get is people being a bit nervous about the ladder system that we use. So think of a bunk, that you had at the holiday home when you're growing up. It's not quite like that. If you've ever been to an A-frame house, you can imagine the steep set of stairs that they would have, and it's very, very similar to that. So the stairs actually have handrails on the side of them, so most people can get up and down. I'm not saying everybody can, but the majority can. It's not just a hand over foot rung ladder like you.
Yeah, of course. So I guess if you are concerned, definitely look at that upgrade to the platinum.
Absolutely.
Some questions we do often get asked: can I walk up and down the whole train, and can I bring my own alcohol on board?
So I always find the alcohol one quite an interesting question to ask. But I get it relatively regularly as well. No, you cannot bring alcohol on board. We're an all-inclusive service, and that includes alcohol as well. I can't see why. The only time you need to probably bring alcohol on board is if you've done the wineries tour and you've purchased some wine. That situation you can bring it on, but it's obviously not to be drunk on board. We've got an RSA license that we've got to adhere to. In terms of walking through the whole train, no, you can't. So the way the train is, as I said before, you've got a platinum section, and then the gold is broken into what we call a consist. Simplest way to look at it is a section. So many cabins or carriages in together with one lounge and one dining car, or what will now be 2 dining cars. There'll be about 4 of those on the train, and then a couple of sections of platinum. So when on the train, you only know about your area of gold or platinum, wherever you're traveling, whichever section you're traveling in. The rest of the train, you can just see it out the window, and you kind of forget it's there until you get off and you go and meet a few other people while doing off-train excursions.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Great Southern Journey is a relatively new product for Journey Beyond. Our guests may not be as familiar as obviously as the GAN. Tell us some highlights and why you came to include this particular itinerary.
So the main reason we came to include this itinerary is the GAN actually only runs for 10 months of the year. So we had a 2-month period, and we didn't really know what to do with that product. We really wanted to obviously utilize the train that we have. So that Great Southern is actually the GAN. So we've put a different locomotive on the front of it, painted it bright orange, and then it goes between Adelaide and Brisbane.
Okay.
So it runs over December and January every year. Last season was the first one. So December 2019, we ran the initial service. And then we've got the next season launching on the 4th of December this year. So it runs between Adelaide and Brisbane. It's a 3-day, 2-night service going Adelaide to Brisbane, and a 4-day, 3-night service going Brisbane to Adelaide. In terms of the service levels, it is identical. The train is actually, as I said, the same train. It's where it goes that differs. So you've got all through New South Wales, potentially through Victoria, depending on what happens there, and then obviously into South Australia. So 3 different states, a completely different area with us. It's quite exciting. New train journeys don't come along all that often. The first season, we had a lot of train enthusiasts traveling with us. We're very, very excited to do something a little bit different.
Yeah, of course. Offer something a little bit different for those that are regulars on the train journeys. Well, what's your favourite or must-do excursion offered?
That's like how long's a piece of string. And it's an incredibly hard choice, but I think if I had to pick one, it would be the GAN Expedition, which is, I guess, one of our signature train, which travels southbound from Darwin down to Adelaide. And it stops in a place called Coober Pedy in South Australia. Coober Pedy is one of those places that a lot of people have got on their list to go and do, but it's not the easiest place in the world to get to. And the train is a really easy way to get there. And I personally, I wouldn't have been there had I not been on the GAN Expedition. really, really unique place, really cool experience to go and check it out, get underground, see how these guys live, go into one of their houses, and also check out the Majestic Breakaways, which are just outside Kuapiti. And so, yeah, it's another one of those unique experiences that most people, unless you travel with us, won't get the chance to do.
Okay, good to know. Hot tips from the expert. What's a surprising feature many people don't expect on the train?
I guess I say it's surprising, but a lot of people would say, oh, well, it's food. So to me, the food, what you get, the food is incredible. It is
Yeah.
the best you could ever imagine. But people see the kitchen and they're like, oh yeah, it's going to be some nice food we'll get. It is incredible what they can produce out of a tiny, tiny little kitchen for hundreds of people. The food is absolutely to die for. And also the food is regionally inspired. So the food will differ as you travel along the journey. Breakfast, lunch and dinner cooked on board. Maybe some off board when you've got like a dinner or a breakfast off board. But the food will relate to the food on the Indian Pacific, for example, is different to the food on the GAN, and you'll have different food as you travel along the way. It is just incredible what they can produce, and one of the things that people always come home and talk about.
Lovely. Well, look, we always get some great feedback in regards to the food, so definitely high on our list. With domestic travel likely to be sort of maybe one of the only forms of travel that Australians will be taking at the moment, why are Journey Beyond rail trips a good option for our clients?
I guess the number one and most obvious thing for a lot of people, it's been on their list for a long time to do. If international travel was what they were thinking of, but obviously now can't do that, this is a great opportunity to travel in Australia, see your own country. So you get to travel on an icon, being the train itself, but then you'll get to see a lot of places that you wouldn't have seen otherwise. Get yourself into the Northern Territory, into WA, across the Nullarbor, into these places that are very, very hard to get to without traveling with us on the train. But remember, we're all inclusive as well. So that price that you pay, that's it. So you got to pay, and there's everything's included: all your drinks, all your food, all your off-train excursions. So just like a cruise ship, you've got excursions on the way. The train doesn't just travel non-stop. We'll get off and do 1 to 2 things a day, and those are already included in the price. So you choose which one you want to do once you get on, already included, and then you just jump on and away you go. So it's a nice, easy thing to organise once you've paid that fare, and then it's all go. Leave your wallet at home. Nice and easy trip.
Of course. Oh gosh, I'll add that one to my list too. I think this list keeps getting longer and longer.
That's the issue.
Gareth, thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully it's not too long till we can have you back in the office and have a catch up. But yes, thank you so much for being part of our series.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Bye.